This insane idea was rejected over 1,000 times, led to $25,000 in debt, and forced the founders to sell cereal boxes just to survive. Yet, it became a $100 billion company that changed world travel forever. This is the unforgettable, true story of Airbnb. And if you're ready for the most powerful English lesson of your life, hit the subscribe button now and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story of unbreakable courage. Today, we're going deep into one of the most powerful true stories you will ever hear. It's a story about rejection, about struggle, about unbreakable belief, and about quiet, unstoppable courage. This isn't just fiction. This is real life. This is the incredible journey of two guys who were so broke they couldn't even pay their rent. So they came up with an idea, a crazy idea, to rent out 3 air mattresses in their own small living room. People laughed at them. They were rejected by investors over 1,000 times. They were drowning in debt. But they simply would not give up. Today, that one strange idea has completely changed the way the world travels. Their small startup is now worth over $100 billion, and millions of people all over the world sleep in their rentals every single night. Yes, this is the real human success story of Airbnb. And if you listen to this story until the very end, I promise you, it will inspire you, it will teach you, and it just might change your life forever. From this story, you will learn many important things. How to survive when you have absolutely no money. How to believe in yourself when no one else supports you. How to create something big and world-changing with almost nothing at all. How to turn painful rejection into incredible power. And most importantly, how you can start from zero. And the best part? You will also improve your English, because this whole story is told in simple, powerful, beginner-friendly English. So you learn English while you are being deeply inspired. So, sit back, take a deep, slow breath, and relax. Because this story is emotional, it is truly motivational, and it is completely unforgettable. Let's begin. Part 1. 2 guys, no money. 1 air mattress. The story starts in the year 2007 in the vibrant, expensive city of San Francisco, California. We meet 2 friends, Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia, and these 2 friends were really struggling. They had recently moved to San Francisco, hoping for a fresh start, a big idea. But right now, they were simply broke. Their monthly rent was a large sum, $1,150, and they simply couldn't afford it. They had no stable job, no big business plan, and definitely no savings in the bank. They had one thing, though, a dream. Let's build something, they would tell each other. But as we all know, dreams do not pay the monthly rent. One day, they saw something that sparked an idea. A huge design conference was coming to town. The city was full of visitors. Every single hotel room in San Francisco was completely sold out. There were no places left to stay. Suddenly, Joe had a truly wild idea. He looked at Brian and asked, "Brian, what if we rent out our living room for a few nights? We don't have a real bed, but we do have 3 air mattresses. You know, the ones you pump air into?" Brian looked at him. He looked confused, maybe a little bit shocked. "Air mattresses? Are you serious, Joe?" But Joe just smiled. "Yes, let's offer an air bed and breakfast experience. We will give people a mattress on the floor, some simple homemade breakfast in the morning, and we'll charge them some money." The idea sounded completely insane, didn't it? But they were so desperate. They had to try something. So, they worked quickly. They made a very simple website, just for this small, temporary event. They posted an offer online: stay with locals, sleep on a comfortable airbed, and get a delicious homemade breakfast. And then, they waited. They were sitting by their computer, feeling nervous. Soon, the first bookings came. They got 3 of them. One was from a 30-year-old woman from Boston, another from a kind father who was visiting from Utah, and one more from a digital artist who had traveled all the way from India. Brian and Joe were completely shocked. Strangers were actually paying money to sleep on the floor of their living room. That weekend, they made $240. It wasn't a lot of money, not enough to fix everything, but it was a moment of true magic. It was the very first time their crazy idea had made real money. It felt like a sign. But then, the design conference ended, and just as suddenly, the bookings stopped. Their simple website was empty again. They realized a painful truth. One small event helped us, but this is not a real business yet. They needed a much, much bigger plan. So they called another friend, Nathan Blecharczyk, who was a brilliant computer engineer. Nathan joined as the 3rd co-founder. The 3 of them began working seriously together. They started asking the big question: what if we build a real platform where anyone, anywhere in the world, can rent out their spare room or their whole home to travelers? A platform that would give people extra income and offer travelers cheaper, more unique ways to see the world. A completely new kind of travel experience. They renamed the idea Airbnb.com, short for Air, Bed, and Breakfast. They officially launched the new site. They uploaded new listings. They improved the design to look more professional. But there was still a huge problem. Nobody was using it. They had 0 users. They had no bookings. They had no money. They had 0 interest from investors. They were working day and night. Powered by passion, but nothing was growing. In fact, their debt was growing. They now had credit card debt of over $25,000. They were living only on simple cereal and cheap peanut butter sandwiches. They were running out of time. One day, they hit rock bottom. Brian looked at Joe, and his voice was tired. "Joe, we need money. Anything. Even $500 right now would help us survive." It was the year 2008, a huge election year in the U.S. Barack Obama was running against John McCain. Joe, the designer, got another wild, strange idea. He designed limited edition cereal boxes, Obama O's, and Captain McCain's. They filled these colorful boxes with very cheap cereal, printed the funny boxes, and started selling them for $40 each to enthusiastic political fans. Believe it or not, from those cereal boxes, they made $30,000. That money saved Airbnb. It was a lifeline. They used that money to keep building the platform, fixing the code, and trying to attract users. But they still had a very long way to go. Call to action. Mid-story engagement and comments. That moment, making money by selling cereal boxes when your huge startup is failing? That's just amazing, isn't it? It shows how creative you have to be to survive. It also shows how desperate they were. I want to ask you a question about this part of the story. If you were Brian and Joe, with $25,000 in debt, and your idea was being laughed at, would you have done something so strange and maybe a little embarrassing, like selling cereal, just to keep your dream alive? Or would you have simply quit and gone to get a normal job? What would you have done to survive? Please, tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I truly want to read your opinion. Part 2. The Battle for Belief. Now came the hardest part of the entire journey. Brian, Joe, and Nathan went to the famous investors in Silicon Valley to pitch their idea. They were trying to raise a small amount of money to grow the company. They were rejected over 1,000 times. Think about that number. 1,000 times a person with money looked at them and said, "No." Some of the investors were really harsh. They said things like, "No one will ever sleep in a stranger's house. That is too risky. This is not an idea that can grow big." One famous investor even said, "This is the worst idea I have ever heard in my life." But Brian, Joe, and Nathan did not stop. They kept going, even when everyone they met laughed at them. They were not chasing success anymore. They were chasing survival. They were broke. They were exhausted. But deep, deep down, they still held on to a tiny piece of belief. If we can survive this terrible time, we can change the world. That deep, unshakable courage is what kept Airbnb alive when it should have just died. Brian Chesky was tired. Joe Gebbia was frustrated and felt stuck. Nathan Blecharczyk was busy debugging the computer code all day. They sat on the floor of their small San Francisco apartment, trying to decide what to do next. Then, Brian got an important email. It was from a friend who told him, "There is a famous startup program called Y Combinator, YC. They help small founders like you build really big companies. You should apply right now." Brian knew the name. Y Combinator was famous for helping companies like Dropbox and Reddit become huge successes. But YC only accepted the absolute best ideas. Would they accept 3 guys renting out airbeds? They didn't know, but they applied. Y Combinator called them for an interview. It was in Mountain View, California, in a small, quiet office. Paul Graham, the co-founder of YC, listened to their pitch very carefully. Brian was so nervous his hands were shaking. Joe was sweating. Nathan was quiet, just observing. They explained their strange idea, how total strangers could sleep in each other's homes. They explained the airbeds, and they even explained how they made money from those silly cereal boxes. At first, Paul Graham looked very confused. He asked, "People are really doing this? Sleeping in strangers' homes?" Joe replied, "Yes, they are doing it already, Mr. Graham, and they actually love the experience." Paul paused for a long time. Then, a slow smile came to his face. He finally said, "It's weird. It's crazy, but it just might work." Airbnb was accepted into Y Combinator. They received $20,000 in seed funding. That wasn't a lot of money, but to them, it felt like $1 million. More importantly, they now had access to important mentors, real investors, and a huge network of startup leaders. They finally had a chance. Not success, but a real, solid chance. From January to March 2009, the Airbnb founders worked non-stop inside Y Combinator. They had only 3 months to prove that their idea could actually grow. 3 months to fix their product, find real users, and build the most important thing: trust. They worked day and night. They made the website much better. They added clearer, professional photos. They added reviews, user profiles, and safety systems. They changed the whole feeling of Airbnb. It was no longer just about airbeds. Now it was about renting out any space, a bed, a room, or even your whole house. And they made a huge decision. They decided to focus on one city only: New York City. Brian and Joe flew to New York with almost no money left. They found every single Airbnb host in the city. They went door to door, meeting them in person, shaking their hands. They took professional, beautiful photos of each home. They sat down with the hosts and taught them how to write good descriptions of their places. They explained how to build trust with guests. This was not a digital strategy. This was a human strategy, and it worked perfectly. Hosts felt respected and valued. Guests saw much better, more honest listings. and bookings slowly started to increase. Back in San Francisco, Nathan worked tirelessly on the code. He built a better booking system, a secure payment gateway, and essential safety features. Their strategy was simple. If we can make Airbnb work and grow in one city, we can repeat it everywhere in the world. And slowly, it began to work. They went from 5 bookings a week to 20 bookings a week, then 100 bookings a week. They had momentum. Call to action 2. The call to subscribe. This story is just starting to get good, isn't it? The founders have survived failure and rejection, and now they finally have momentum. But a massive new set of battles is coming: global expansion, angry governments, and huge hotel chains fighting against them. Don't miss the next dramatic part of this journey. This channel is all about stories that truly inspire you and help your English grow strong. Please hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss any of our powerful stories that will change your mindset and improve your English at the same time. Let's keep learning together. Part 3. The Breakthrough and the Global Battle. In March 2009, during Y Combinator's final presentation day, known as Demo Day, Airbnb pitched their idea to a room full of investors one last time. They showed their growing number of users real, emotional stories from New York, their beautiful new website, and a bold vision. One day, people will travel the world, not through boring hotels, but by staying with local people, connecting with the community. Some investors were still unsure, but this time, a few believed. Airbnb raised $600,000 in seed funding. Then, a big journalist from the famous magazine TechCrunch wrote an article with an exciting headline: Airbnb, rent a couch, meet the world. That article exploded. It went viral on the internet. Suddenly, everyone was talking about Airbnb. With the new money and the massive publicity, Airbnb began to expand rapidly. First, New York, then Los Angeles, then Chicago. Soon, it was Paris, London, and Berlin. People in different countries started listing their homes. Travelers found cheaper, more unique, more personal places to stay. It was no longer just about saving money. It was about having a real experience, about meeting locals, about feeling like you are at home in a foreign land. A community began to grow quickly. It wasn't just a product. It was a global movement. Airbnb took a small commission, about 10% to 15%, from each booking. As the number of bookings grew, their revenue exploded. They hired new people. They built customer service teams, strong safety protocols, and a much better review system. But they still faced their biggest challenge. Can we make people trust total strangers? So, they made trust their brand. They created verified IDs, host-to-guest messaging, honest ratings and reviews, secure payment systems, and 24/7 customer support. With every single booking, the feeling of trust grew stronger. Still, not everything was perfect. In 2011, a host in San Francisco reported that her apartment was badly damaged by a guest. The story was all over the news. People started asking, is Airbnb truly safe? The company acted fast and with great humanity. They apologized publicly, and they immediately introduced a $1 million host guarantee insurance policy. They showed the world that they cared deeply about their community. That single moment could have killed Airbnb. But instead, because of their quick, honest action, it made them much stronger. Part 4. The Battle to Build a Global Brand. Between 2011 and 2013, Airbnb expanded into more than 190 countries. That is an amazing speed. In just a few short years, it became one of the fastest-growing travel companies in the world. This was no longer three guys in an apartment. This was a company with hundreds of employees and millions of users. But fast success always brings big problems. As Airbnb grew, cities and governments around the world started to push back. They were confused. They asked, are these properties homes or are they hotels? Are these renters or are they business owners? Who is paying tax? What about safety rules? Big cities like New York, Paris, Barcelona, and Tokyo began creating strict rules. In some places, Airbnb was even completely banned. The huge hotel associations got angry. They said, Airbnb is killing our business. They are stealing our guests. They began huge campaigns against Airbnb, sending millions of dollars to influence local laws. Suddenly, Airbnb was no longer just a simple tech company. It had become a political company. Airbnb didn't fight back with anger or threats. They used smart strategy, law, and calm communication. They built special public policy teams in each region. They hired experienced lawyers to work with local governments. They created special tax agreements to help cities earn money. They said clearly, we do not want to break your laws. We want to work with your cities. Airbnb is not the enemy. We are simply the future of travel. This smart approach made a real difference. In many places, instead of being banned, Airbnb was accepted, just with new, clear rules. While the legal battles continued, Airbnb focused on its most powerful weapon, the community. They started organizing big meetups with their hosts, holding workshops in local neighborhoods, and sharing powerful success stories on YouTube and social media. They showed the world the simple truth. Airbnb helps normal people make a living. Single mothers, retired couples, students, all earning much-needed income from their spare room or their entire house. For many, Airbnb had become their only lifeline. This deep, emotional connection became the true heart of their brand. Airbnb was no longer just about beds. It was about belonging. They launched a new mission statement, Belong Anywhere. And people around the world instantly believed in it. Call to action. Flexible and shareable. Optional. What an important lesson here. When the world attacks you, focus on your true mission and your community. Do you know someone right now who is trying to start a business or follow a difficult dream? Someone who needs to hear this lesson about believing in people? If you found this part of the story inspiring, please take just a second to share this video with them. A story like this can give them the courage to keep going. Let's spread this simple message of resilience. Part 5. The crisis that nearly killed Airbnb. It was March 2020. Airbnb, a true global travel company, was standing proudly on top of the world. They had millions of guests and listings, a massive valuation, and they were preparing for a huge IPO, going public on the stock market. But then, the unthinkable happened. COVID-19 arrived, and everything in the world collapsed. Borders were immediately closed. Planes were grounded. Hotels, homes, and Airbnbs sat completely empty. Countries went into total lockdown. People were terrified to travel. And Airbnb, a company built entirely on travel, movement, and human connection, was now in the middle of a global disaster. Almost overnight, their entire business was gone. Airbnb's revenue dropped by an astonishing 80% in just 8 weeks. That is not a small dip. That is like falling straight off a mountain. Cancellations flooded their system. Millions of dollars had to be refunded immediately. Hosts were angry. Guests were scared. Employees were confused. The future was completely dark. Brian Chesky, the CEO, later said, "It felt like I was watching a terrible car crash in slow motion, and I was the one driving the car." This was no longer about growing the company. It was about saving it from death. By May 2020, Airbnb was losing money very quickly. They had to make a decision, or the company would die. Brian Chesky and the leadership team made a heartbreaking choice. They had to lay off 25% of the entire company, 1,900 loyal employees. It was the hardest moment in Airbnb's history, but the way they handled it was truly different. Most companies fire people and walk away. Airbnb did it with incredible humanity, honesty, and love. Every laid-off employee received a minimum of 14 weeks' pay. Airbnb let them keep their company laptops so they could job hunt remotely. They built a special directory to help other companies hire these talented people. The CEO, Brian Chesky, personally wrote a public letter explaining everything with full transparency and sorrow. They even gave extra equity to the employees so they could still benefit if Airbnb survived and succeeded in the future. At the end of the letter, Brian wrote, "This is not just a company, it's a mission, and it's filled with people who made it magical." Even in deep pain, Airbnb chose love over greed. Now that travel was frozen, Airbnb had to rethink absolutely everything. They started asking, what do people need right now? What can Airbnb offer if the world isn't traveling far? And they listened carefully. People were tired of being stuck in their homes. They were looking for safe, local getaways. Homes with long-term stays, private, clean places to work or isolate. Small cabins, countryside cottages, and peaceful hideaways became popular. Airbnb made a massive shift. They added new categories: monthly stays, work-from-anywhere homes, enhanced cleaning listings, and flexible cancellation options. They also launched Airbnb online experiences, where people could join virtual cooking classes, music lessons, or meditation sessions from their own homes. Suddenly, Airbnb became more than just travel. It became about connection, learning, and healing. This pivot worked. Slowly, bookings started to return, not for international travel, but for domestic getaways. People began booking local trips within driving distance. Instead of hotels, they chose private homes, which felt cleaner, safer, and much more personal. By late 2020, Airbnb was starting to breathe again. And then, something even bigger happened. In December 2020, after surviving the storm, they decided to go ahead with their plan. Airbnb went public on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange. On the day of the IPO, Airbnb's shares were priced at $68 per share. But the stock opened at an astonishing $146 per share. The company was instantly worth over $100 billion. This made it one of the biggest comeback stories in business history. Just 8 months earlier, Airbnb was collapsing. Now, it had become a $100 billion miracle. Part 6. The dream that belonged to the whole world. The real success of Airbnb, however, was never about the valuation or the IPO. The real success was this: they completely changed how the world feels when it travels. They changed what it means to be a stranger. They created a sense of belonging in a world that often feels full of distance. Before Airbnb, people believed you needed a big hotel to feel safe. You needed big companies to feel comfortable. You needed a lot of money to travel the world. But Airbnb showed something different. They proved that a normal person can be a wonderful host. a small apartment can feel like a real home. A simple human connection can be much more powerful than 5 stars on a wall. They created a new way of life, a space somewhere between a home and a hotel, somewhere between business and friendship, somewhere between fear and trust. Airbnb didn't just build a company, they built a culture. At the heart of everything, from that first airbed to the billion-dollar IPO, was one simple, powerful belief. People are good. That's it. The entire company was built on the belief that if you give strangers a chance, they will often surprise you in a wonderful way. If you offer trust, you will most likely receive it back. If you open your door, you might just open your heart too. It's not just about travel. It's about our shared humanity. Behind every Airbnb booking, there is a powerful story. There's a retired woman in Lisbon who hosts guests to feel less lonely and now has friends in 40 different countries. There's a single father in Thailand who paid for his daughter's university education by renting out a beautiful treehouse. There's a cancer survivor in the US, who turned her home into a peaceful, healing place for travelers and found new meaning in her life. These stories are not just statistics. They are proof that Airbnb became a lifeline, not just a simple platform. When you sleep in someone's home, you step into their world. And when someone trusts you with their home, they truly enter your heart. This is how strangers became neighbors, and neighbors became a kind of family, and the world became a little smaller and much kinder. Years later, the founders often look back on the long, difficult journey. Brian Chesky once said in an interview, "If Airbnb had failed, I think the world would have been okay, but I wouldn't have been, because Airbnb is not just something I built. It's something that truly built me." Gebbia reflected, "Design taught me about beauty, but Airbnb taught me everything about people." And Nathan, the quiet one, said, "You can write perfect code, but in the end, it is the people who matter most, and I am glad I helped them connect." They all could have taken easier, safer jobs. They all could have quit during the crazy cereal box phase, or after 1,000 rejections, or during the terrifying pandemic. But they didn't. Why? Because the real product wasn't rooms, it was resilience. And this, my friends, is where this powerful story becomes yours. Because this is not just about 3 guys who built a startup. This is about you. Yes, you listening right now. You who has a small, simple idea. You who wants to start something new. You who has been rejected. You who feels broke, tired, doubting, or scared. You who thinks, maybe I'm not enough. Airbnb proves that you are enough. You don't need perfect skills. You don't need a huge amount of money. You don't need to wait for the absolutely perfect time. You just need an idea, a big heart, a reason to begin, and the quiet courage to keep going, even when no one else believes in you. That is the secret. If you have that, you can build anything. You can change everything. You can take your version of an air mattress and turn it into something that touches the entire world. What made Airbnb go viral wasn't just their clever idea. It was their love. Love for people. Love for design. Love for solving problems. Love for every small host and every curious guest. They deeply cared. And that caring, that powerful emotional fire, burned through rejection, poverty, failure, crisis, and chaos until it became a brilliant light for millions of people. That's what made them truly unstoppable. And if you carry that same love, if you put your whole heart into your dream, no force in the world can stop you either. from a simple airbed to a $100 billion empire. This is not just a business story. It's a story about human struggle, about purpose, about trust, and about building a world where you don't have to be rich to feel truly at home. Call to action. The final, community building. And that, my friends, is where our incredible story concludes for today. This one was a real journey, wasn't it? Full of ups and downs, failure and success. I am so curious to hear your take on it all. What were your final thoughts? What was the biggest lesson you learned from Brian, Joe, and Nathan? Do you have any lingering questions about why a character did what they did, or a part of the story you'd like me to explain more simply? Please, leave all your opinions, theories, and questions below in the comments section. I truly love reading them and building this wonderful English learning conversation and community with all of you. Thank you so much for listening, for feeling the story, and for learning with me. I will see you in the next powerful English story. Keep practicing, and keep dreaming big. Goodbye for now.